Something pretty big just happened deep in the forests of central India. It's a conflict that's been going on for decades, but one single event has sent ripples through the whole region. A high-value Maoist fighter just walked out of the jungle and gave herself up.
So, just how important was she? Well, check out this number. 14 lakh rupees. That was the combined reward multiple states were offering for her capture. So yeah, we're not talking about your average foot soldier here. This was a big deal.
Get this. She was a bodyguard for a top commander. We're talking inner circle stuff. Her job was to protect a major leader in the Maoist Central Committee. That's a position of huge trust and responsibility.
Which leads to the big question, right? Why would someone in her position just decide to lay down their weapon and walk away from the only life they've ever known? To figure that out, we really have to dig into her story.
Okay, so let's get into it. Who is this woman? Her name is Sunita, and her story, well, it gives us a really rare look into the life of an insurgent who's come to a major crossroads.
First off, Sunita is just 23 years old. She's from the Bijapur district, which is pretty much the heartland of this whole insurgency. But don't let her age fool you. She'd already climbed the ranks to become an area committee member. That's a real position of authority, especially in the GRB division, which is a super important zone for them.
And just a quick refresher, when we say Maoist or Naxalite here in India, we're talking about folks involved in an armed insurgency against the state. It's an ideology-driven conflict that's been going on for, believe it or not, more than half a century.
And like I said, Sunita was no small fry. She was literally on the elite protection team for a senior leader named Ramundar. And he's a central committee member. That's the top brass of their leadership. So the kind of access and responsibility she had, it was huge.
So now that you know who she is, what happened becomes even more remarkable. Let's break down exactly how this all went down, how a senior bodyguard for a top commander decided she needed a new path out of the forest.
The thing that's so incredible here is that this was all her doing. She wasn't caught. Think about it. First, she takes this massive risk to slip away from her group. Then, she's hiding out in the forest all alone for days. Then she walks up to an anti-Naxal camp totally unarmed and says, "I want to surrender." And to prove she was serious, she took them right to her secret stash of weapons.
And we're not talking about a small pistol here. They found an INS SAS assault rifle, a bunch of magazines, and even a shell for a grenade launcher. This was her gear, her personal arsenal, and she just gave it up? That's a pretty clear signal that you're done, right?
And this is where it gets really interesting. This is the key to the whole story. Her timing was perfect, because it turns out she's the very first person to surrender under a brand new government policy that was designed for exactly this kind of situation.
Yep, this policy just kicked off in August 2023, just a few months before she surrendered. The whole idea is to create what officials are calling rehabilitation pathways. It's a formal system to help active fighters leave the conflict and get back to a normal civilian life.
So you can imagine, when something like this happens, the very first test case of your shiny new policy, the government is going to have something to say about it. Let's take a look at how they framed this thing.
For the officials, this was a massive win, a triple win actually. First, it makes their new policy look like a huge success right out of the gate. Second, it's the first time in 30 years a Naxalite from another state has surrendered here. And third, they're basically saying, see, our tough stance is working.
And yeah, this quote from the chief minister pretty much says it all. You can hear the confidence, right? He's basically declaring that the insurgency is weakening, their numbers are dropping, and the government's plan is what's finishing the job.
So the government is essentially presenting this as a major turning point. The message they're sending to the fighters still out there in the forest is pretty simple. Your options are running out. It's coming down to just two choices.
It's this two-pronged attack you see. On one side, you've got the stick. They're still going after them hard. This year alone, they've eliminated 10 fighters who had over 1.5 crore rupees in rewards on them. But on the other side, you have the carrot, this new policy that gives people like Sunita a way out. It's a classic strategy.
And that's why Sunita is so important here. Her surrender isn't just about one person. The government is hoping it sets a precedent. They want other fighters to see what she did, see that there's a real path out, and decide to follow suit. They're banking on a domino effect.
So, that's where we're at. And it leaves us with a really big question, doesn't it? Sunita's story is proof that this new rehabilitation path is real. But is that going to be enough to convince the fighters still out there that the war is over and that surrender is no longer a defeat,
But maybe, just maybe, their only real way to survive